Most dog owners believe their dog feels loved every single day. But there's an uncomfortable possibility most people never stop to consider. What if your dog doesn't actually experience your love the way you think they do? Not because you don't care, not because you're doing something wrong on purpose, but because love doesn't land the same way for dogs as it does for humans. Where we rely on affection, expression, and intention, dogs read something much quieter. They read safety. They read patterns. They read the emotional atmosphere around them. And once you begin to understand that, you start to realize that love, from their perspective, is less about what you give and more about how they feel in your presence. What you're about to understand may change the way you see your relationship with your dog entirely, because when you stop thinking in terms of affection alone and start seeing the world through the way your dog experiences it, small moments begin to carry a different kind of meaning. If this kind of deeper connection matters to you, staying with this idea a little longer may reveal just how much your dog has been responding to all along, often in ways that are easy to miss when you're only looking on the surface. Most people assume that physical affection is the clearest expression of love, which is why hugging a dog feels so natural. You pull them close, wrap your arms around them, and expect that warmth to be shared. But for many dogs, that moment doesn't feel the way you imagine. Their body is not wired to interpret restraint as comfort. Even when your intention is gentle, the sensation of being held tightly can register as pressure, as a subtle loss of control over their own movement. And that small shift, almost invisible from the outside, can create tension where you meant to create closeness. What changes everything is not the absence of touch, but the quality of it. When your hand moves slowly, when it rests without expectation, when it gives the dog space to lean in or step away, something inside them begins to soften. A gentle touch along the neck, behind the ears, across the chest. These are places where the body can relax instead of brace. You can see it happen if you look closely enough. Their breathing slows. Their muscles release. Their eyes soften in a way that isn't about excitement, but about trust. In those moments, you're not asking them to accept affection. You're offering them a space where they feel safe enough to receive it. And for a dog, that distinction changes everything, because safety is not separate from love. It is the foundation of it. The same quiet misunderstanding appears during something as simple as a walk. From a human perspective, a walk has a purpose: movement, exercise, getting from one place to another. So when your dog stops every few steps, nose pressed to the ground, fully absorbed in a scent you can't even detect, it can feel like an interruption, a delay, something that needs to be managed or corrected. But for your dog, that moment is not a distraction from the walk. It is the walk. Sniffing is how they interpret the world. It's how they gather context, track changes, and make sense of the environment around them. When you allow that process to unfold without rushing it, their body begins to shift. The leash stays loose. Their pace slows. Their nervous system moves from alert to regulated. Each scent becomes information, and that information creates a sense of control. When you pull them forward too quickly, even unintentionally, it can signal that their natural way of understanding the world doesn't have space here. But when you let them linger, when you allow curiosity to lead for a moment, you're communicating something much deeper than permission. You're telling them that their instincts are valid. Over time, that builds not excitement, but a grounded kind of calm, a quiet confidence that follows them beyond the walk itself. That sense of calm is also shaped by something even more subtle: the rhythm of daily life. What may feel repetitive or uneventful to you often carries a deep sense of reassurance for your dog. When meals happen at a familiar time, when walks follow a predictable pattern, When rest comes without sudden interruption, your dog begins to settle into a kind of internal certainty. They no longer have to stay on edge, scanning for what might happen next. They begin to know. And that knowing creates emotional stability, not the kind that shows up as excitement, but the kind that allows the body to relax without hesitation. Each repeated pattern quietly reinforces the idea that the world is consistent, that it doesn't shift unpredictably, and that you are a stable presence within it. Over time, this consistency shapes how your dog moves through their day. They become less reactive, less uncertain, and more at ease in their own space. It's not about control, it's about trust built through repetition, where nothing needs to be questioned because everything already makes sense. Clarity in communication builds on that same foundation. Dogs don't struggle to learn what we ask of them. What unsettles them is inconsistency. When the same word carries different meanings depending on the moment, or when expectations shift without warning, their mind doesn't settle. It keeps searching, trying to understand what is being asked, never fully certain that it has the right answer. That uncertainty, even when subtle, creates a constant low-level tension. But when your signals remain consistent, when your tone, your gestures, and your expectations align in a predictable way, something inside them resolves. They stop guessing. They stop scanning for changes in your mood or intention. Instead, they begin to trust the language you're using. And that trust allows them to move through the world with a kind of quiet confidence. They don't hesitate as much. They don't second-guess their responses. They understand, and in that understanding, they feel supported. Not controlled, not corrected, but guided in a way that feels stable and safe. Beyond words and routines, there is another layer your dog is constantly responding to, often without you realizing it: your internal state. The way you breathe, the way you hold your body, the tone that carries through your voice, even when you're not speaking directly to them. Dogs are deeply attuned to the emotional atmosphere around them, especially when it comes from the person they trust most. They don't need explicit signals to sense tension or calm. They feel it immediately. When your movements slow, when your presence becomes steady, their body often follows without effort. It isn't obedience in the traditional sense, it's alignment. Your calm becomes something they can settle into. In moments where they might otherwise feel uncertain or overstimulated, simply being near you, when you are grounded, can shift their entire state. You're not telling them to relax, you're showing them what relaxation feels like. And over time, that shared regulation becomes something they carry with them even when you're not actively guiding them. All of this becomes even more meaningful when you begin to see your dog not just as a pet, but as an individual. Beyond breed characteristics or general behavior patterns, there is a unique way your dog moves through the world. Small preferences that don't announce themselves loudly, subtle hesitations, quiet moments of curiosity, the way they enter a new space, the sounds that make them pause, the things that draw their attention without effort. These details are easy to overlook if you're only focused on behavior in a broad sense. But when you slow down enough to notice them, your relationship begins to change. You're no longer reacting to what your dog does, you're responding to who they are. And your dog feels that difference immediately. They don't feel like they need to adjust themselves to meet expectations. They don't feel pressured to perform or behave in a certain way to be accepted. Instead, they experience something much more grounding. They feel recognized. And that recognition builds a form of trust that is quiet but incredibly strong because it allows them to exist as themselves without tension. That sense of safety becomes complete when your dog has a place where nothing is asked of them at all, a space that belongs entirely to them, not assigned as a command, but chosen as a retreat, a bed that carries their scent, a corner of the house that remains undisturbed, a place where no hands reach in unexpectedly, where no voice interrupts, where no expectation follows them. In that space, their body can finally let go in a way that doesn't require awareness or adjustment. When a dog knows they can step away without being corrected or followed, something important begins to dissolve. They no longer need to stay alert. They no longer need to manage the environment around them. They can simply exist. And that experience teaches them something powerful, even if it's never spoken. It tells them that their boundaries are respected, that their need for space is understood. Over time, that respect transforms into confidence, and that confidence deepens into trust. Not the kind that shows itself in dramatic gestures, but the kind that remains steady in the background, shaping how safe they feel in every moment that follows. What all of this reveals, in the simplest possible way, is that love for a dog is not measured by how much affection you give, but by how consistently they feel safe in your presence. It lives in the quiet moments that often go unnoticed, in the pauses you allow, in the rhythms you maintain, in the calm you carry with you. These are the things your dog responds to most deeply, even if they never draw attention to them in obvious ways. And once you begin to see your relationship through that lens, you start to notice other behaviors differently as well. Moments that once felt confusing or even awkward begin to take on new meaning. One of the most misunderstood of these is when your dog sniffs certain parts of you. It might seem strange from a human perspective, but for your dog, it's one of the most natural and important ways they gather information about you and the world around them. And understanding what they're actually learning in those moments may reveal just how much they've been communicating all along.